Welcome to the latest episode of 305 Vox Populi. I'm Mayor Manny Cid, and with us today, we have Don Bailey Jr. How you doing, Don?
I'm doing great. Doing great, Mayor. How are you doing?
All is well. All is well.
Good.
Appreciate you having on, because I think your story is so interesting, inspirational, motivational, especially to those kids that are going to hear it. And I think you starting off in our community, going to HML.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your time at HML as a Trojan.
You know, how I ended up here is a little different now. I grew up in North Miami, so I really, back in the 70s, I grew up in the North Miami area. Miami Lakes was as far away as you could get.
Wow.
I mean, when you think about it, Biscayne Boulevard to West 12th Avenue. But I got out here. Coach Joe Brodsky was the head football coach then. And, like ninth grade, I was at a Catholic high school, and it didn't work real well for me. You know what
Which
I mean?
one? Which one was that?
Curly High School, right?
Curly High.
So, and it just, I don't know, maybe it was too structured for me. I don't know what the deal was, but I decided then, and that was the only year that I didn't play sports, that I didn't play football. So Coach Brodsky and my dad grew up together. They went to high school together, were best friends together, best man at the wedding, the whole deal. And Coach Brodsky was the head football coach at Miami Lakes. So I got in my head in ninth grade, I guess I'm going to Miami Lakes. So I had to go through all the curriculum things downtown and do whatever I had to do to get to HML. And I came out here and I only knew Larry Brodsky and a couple other people, and Coach Brodsky. That was it when I showed up. And it really ended up turning out to be one of the greatest things in my life, because HML at that time was the perfect school for me, and I think really for everybody. They were academically, they were great, and then sports, they had the best sports in Dade County. They were like number 1, 2, 3, 4 in Dade County the whole time. And I played junior varsity football and did well at that. And then my junior year, Coach Brodsky was the head coach, and I didn't do so well that year. I wasn't ready for the big time. And then my senior year, Coach Brodsky left and went to the University of Miami. And it really turned out, I'll share this with people, because I went to Miami Lakes to play football for Coach Brodsky. And he leaves to go to University of Miami as a running back coach. And I go to my dad, what are we going to do? I mean, I came out to HML to play for Coach Brodsky. He says, hold on a minute. This may work out better for you and you don't even know. Just give it a chance. And the new head coach was Mike Uspensky, and they brought in an offensive line coach who was the head coach the year before at Miami Northwestern, named Walt Frazier, who went on to Carroll City.
Wow.
And so my senior year, I ended up being captain at Lakes and doing well, but Mike Uspensky, from that day on until he passed away, a month did not go by that I didn't see or talk to him. And Walt Frazier, to this day, maybe I never go more than 2 weeks without speaking to him. I saw him yesterday. And
Wow.
So the relationships that I made there and the preparation that I had there, Miami Lakes, Highly Miami Lakes football and the school absolutely prepared me for college football. I was not behind. I was not missing techniques. I was advanced, but when I got as advanced as a high school player when I got there. And it was a great experience. Now, the negative to me is that unfortunately I didn't grow up out here and I didn't live out here. So, I was kind of a transplant, so to speak, but everybody welcomed me with open arms, and I have, friends from this day and have met people that I still do business with. And it was a fantastic experience at HML.
That's phenomenal. And real quick on Coach Uspensky, I remember campaigning and I knocked on his door and we hit it off. We became friends, and when he told me who he was and he told me his name, I was like, you're the coach at HML and you're a legend. And after that, he would eat at my restaurant almost every weekend. So we would break bread all the time and talk. And fortunately, I know he passed a couple years back. Yeah. But before he passed, we were able to put him into the Hall of Fame, even though he couldn't be there for the actual ceremony. I remember that calling his wife, myself, Jim Hamilton,
Carol,
Carol, letting Carol know, and she told Coach U before he passed that we were going to honor him forever.
And that was wonderful that you did that. I remember that. I was a part of that. I came and he just, and thank you for doing that, because he needed to be honored. And he had a lot of guts to take that job after Joe Brodsky. Coach Brodsky was a legend, and is today a legend. And he came in and he did it his way, and fantastic man. And he and Walt Frazier at the high school level, two of the most influential people in my life.
I mean, that's what a coach is supposed to be. So he was that person that we can say, hey, all coaches in Dade County should emulate Coach U. So appreciate you sharing that, and I know how, and his memory will live forever here in our community. So from your journey at HML, when did you get the call that you were being offered a scholarship at the University of Miami? How did that feel? Because from not playing too well your junior year, right? Playing JV your freshman and missing that 1 year between Curly and HML, to your junior year, to them being the captain, having a good year, and getting a phone call. How was that whole process? Who called you? How'd you, and looking back on it, how was that feel?
How it happened is I got great coaching from Walt Frazier. Let's not kid each other, right? I mean, he was the best offensive line coach in the world, right? And I was fortunate that he was my guy, and I was hungry to learn and hungry to, because I had it in my mind. I was asked this question a couple weeks ago. Was it something similar to this? They says, well, when did you know you were going to play college football? I knew when I was in high school I was going to play college football. And they said, well, when did you know you were going to play in the NFL? The minute I got to college. It was in my mind the whole time. So I had Coach Frazier who really put it together. And then, I was recruited I had offers from Florida State, from Florida, Auburn, Minnesota, Miami. Those were my offers. So it was, but the craziness is nobody would tell me anything. I would go on my trips. I would go see it. I would lie. I had my own thoughts. And we're getting down to signing day and nobody would say anything. And I remember I was sitting in Mike Uspensky's office. I can tell you the desk I was at with the phone had the 5 lines and the red hold button. I don't know if you know what I mean. You would press. Yep. So they said, Don, I was down there. They said, Don, the guy from Auburn's on the phone. I says, okay, come on here. We got to talk to him. And I get on the phone and the guy that's recruiting me says, hey, we're flying down tomorrow. It's signing day. We want to make sure you're going to come to the University of Auburn. We're going to sign you. You want to come down? I says, hold on a minute. Press that red button. Press the next button. I call my dad. 305-757-1578. That's the number. Awesome. I go, Dad, the guy on the phone is from Auburn. They're coming tomorrow. They want to make sure that I'm signing with Auburn. I go, what should I do? He goes, phone goes quiet for a minute. He goes, who the heck are we going to sell the floor to in Auburn, Alabama? He says, you tell that man you're going to the University of Miami. I said, that's all I needed. I just need a little push. And, I was recruited by Coach Brodsky and Arnie Romero, and I wanted to go down there anyway. So I put on and said, Coach, I'm going to UM. I says, I'm sorry, I appreciate it, but I'm going to the U, and hung it up, and that's how it happened.
I want to thank our sponsors. We're powered by Miami Lakes Automall. Thank you, Fred. They're located at 16600 Northwest 57th Avenue, Miami Lakes, 305-455-3510. They gave the seed money to start this program.
Good for them.
Really, really amazing. Don, what do you think about this mural?
Listen, it's my second favorite mural in the world behind the picture there. It's fantastic.
I love
Whoever
it.
did this is beautiful, man.
I love it.
It tells a wonderful story.
It's all about Miami. It's Grisel Gajano. She is a school counselor during the day and then an artist at night. And she painted this, so we appreciate Grisel. Reach her at 786-353-8608. And then Vicky Bakery of Miami Lakes. Shout out to the entire KO family. Appreciate you guys. 13925 Northwest 67th Avenue in Miami Lakes. What's your favorite pastelito?
The deal with the guava and the cheese,
Oh,
man.
the cheese and the guava. Okay, I'm with you.
I don't know if I said it right, but you know what I was talking about.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then the Roadcaster was donated by Enrique Santos. We appreciate you, Enrique. I mean, he came out on a show once. He has a national broadcast, Enrique Santos, and came on the show one time. He's like, you guys don't have a Roadcaster? And he went out, literally bought it, and donated it to the school.
Oh, nice.
Which was really nice. And then shout out to Matter Lakes Broadcasting. When we started this program 3-4 years ago, Albert, already, they started a broadcasting academy in the school that today they have 120 students. And then Brandon and Albert lead that. But not only do they do the podcast where the kids get to learn and meet different folks like yourself that inspire them, but there are sports games at the school, which is really cool. They broadcast them live. They have announcers. They have like ESPN tickers. And I mean, it is phenomenal. They become the envy of this area. And because they started it, a bunch of other schools have started the same thing. So when you got to UM on campus, how were those years at UM? Was it similar to HML where you had to wait your turn, to build up, or did you show up on campus and you played day one?
Well, it was very difficult because a Miami Lakes resident was Howard Schnellenberger, who was the coach. So I was his Coach Schnellenberger.
Who's in the same Hall of Fame as
correct.
Coach U.
And I was there for that one too.
Yep.
But he came in and the challenge was survival of the fittest. And he did not make any bones about it. If you were good enough, no matter what year you were, and you were good enough, you would play. And I came in, and what's ironic is the gentleman who was my offensive line coach at Miami was at Florida when they were recruiting me, and he came down to Miami. And he was Kim Helton, and he was outstanding, and I'm still close with him today. But I came on campus, and I was probably third or fourth team when you start, because that's what happens to the freshmen, right? They put them in the back of the room. And time went by, and it's the last month of the season, and a former Hialeah Miami Lakes guy who was a center, John Fenton, he blows his leg out against Syracuse. So I have to go in and finish the game, and the next week we're going to Penn State. And Miami at that time. We didn't, I think we went 5-6 that year, and Penn State's in the top 20. And I have to start that football game. And that's my first start against Penn State. But the beauty of it is that
At Penn State,
right? And they had the first round draft pick named Bruce Clark at one defensive tackle, Matt Nillen at linebacker. I mean, they were a brand name football team. We're a bunch of kids, bunch of guys. Who are these guys from Miami, right? Miami of Ohio or University of Ohio, right? And but the craziness was that day also was Jim Kelly's very first start. So, and I just happened to be with him last week, and he still tells the story. Coach Schnellenberger walked up to him and says, "I need to speak to you." Immediately, Jim will tell you, "What did I do wrong?" That's what he's thinking. What did I do wrong? Am I getting suspended before the game? Says, "You're starting today." Jim gets the word he's starting. He goes into the bathroom and throws up. The word travels, he's starting. It was my first start, his first start. I think 13 freshmen and sophomores started that day, and we won. And the death row for the last 4 games was Penn State, Alabama, Notre Dame, and Florida. And that's how I kind of beginning and end of my freshman year. But I was fortunate enough to play with a guy like Jim Kelly, and big time. Yeah,
and an incredible coach, incredible team, and so that was the rest of your career. You started.
Yep. I flip-flopped some my sophomore year and started all of my junior and all of my senior year, and then worked out good.
So that senior year, when did you get the call? You're getting drafted. How did that feel? Because I think those are moments in your life that you never forget, like where you were, because that entire grind, right? As a kid, working hard, making sure, and you said you knew you were going to the NFL once you stepped onto the campus.
I knew in my mind I was going. I don't know if they were going to have me, but I knew in my mind I was going to go. Yeah.
So can you go back to the day where they told you, then this round, so Don Bailey Jr. from the University of Miami?
Well, how long ago it was, it wasn't like today on the TV deal, right? So there were 12 rounds, and I can tell you I was at that day, my dad and I went fishing on one of the drift boats because I knew I wasn't going early in the day. I knew I was going to be a late round pick, right? And we come home, and it's, I don't know, my girlfriend from college, at that time, who is now my wife, was at the house. My dad, his wife was there, and it was all four of us. And around, I don't know, it was 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, and we get a phone call. And I get a call from the Chicago Bears. And they said, hey, if you're around, we're going to draft you here in the next 2 or 3 picks. And I had met the guy that called me. He was the video guy, because I played in the Japan Bowl, and he just happened to be the guy there, so that he had a connection or whatever. And I mean, there's no cell phones. I mean, you're getting up and going and picking up the phone and doing that deal. And he says, and I says, great. He goes, what do you think about it? I says, great. I'm ready to go. I'll go be a Bear. I don't care where I gotta go. And the next phone call was the Denver Broncos, and they said, we're going to select you in the 11th round. And I had met their scout a bunch of times. He had scouted me pretty hard on campus and worked out for him. I think his name was Lyde Huggins or something like that. And I was drafted, and 5 minutes later, a guy shows up or 5 minutes before the phone rang, a guy shows up at the door from the Seattle Seahawks trying to sign me as a free agent. Because, back then they try and get you, immediately. And I says, listen, I'm not signing anything. I got to wait till the draft's over. And sure enough, I was drafted. And it was a very special day. And then I got to go out there and get slapped in the face with the reality of the NFL. It's a whole nother game. But it was a priceless moment. And I was very happy to be with the people I was with.
That's awesome. So what was that first day in the NFL? How was that? How was that transition from HML, Miami? Now you're in the NFL. Now you're right. That must have been where you stood in the stadium and you're like, this is similar to the Penn State situation, right? Yeah. Where you were there. Now you're looking around. You're like, whoa.
There was a couple things that happened. One thing I'll share is there was a young man who's no longer with us. His name is Ivory Curry. He played at Miami Central, and he played at Northwest Boys Club. And I played against him when I was in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. I played against him all the time. I was at Miami Shores. He was at Northwest Boys Club. And then I get to Miami Lakes. He's at Central. Play against him for 3 years. I'm in college. I play against him at Florida for 4 years. And then my first game, exhibition game in the NFL, he's returning punts for the Browns or the Bengals. Wow. I forget who it was. So, I mean, that was a neat deal. And then, but the reality of it is it took about 2 plays to realize how far behind I was and what a difference it was. And what's crazy is the first couple plays I was going because the rookies came in, and the rookie camp was back then a couple weeks. Everybody held their own there. But when the veterans come in, there's a guy that played at the University of Miami that was an All-American named Reuben Carter, and Reuben Hurricane Carter, right? Yep. And Don Latimer. And every time I see Reuben Carter, I says, hey man, thank you. He goes, for what? For putting me in the flooring business. You beat me so bad they cut my butt. I had to go get another job. So I mean, they were that good. There's such a difference, at least back then. Because you got 30-year-old men and 32-year-old men going against 21-year-old guys, and that's a big difference.
Huge difference.
Just imagine arm wrestling a guy,
Huge
right?
difference.
So I mean, it was an adjustment period, but I had great coaching there. I had a great offensive line coach there. Was the best technician I've ever seen in my life, except for maybe the offensive line coach now at the University of Miami. But he taught me great technique, which allowed me to continue to play for a few more years.
So from your play, because I think this is also part of, especially for the young kids watching this, a lot of times we believe that, especially with sports, that they last forever, that you're going to play forever. When was that last day that you were like, that's it, I'm hanging them up? And I'm sure that was a tough moment, but when did you come to that realization you were like, you know what, that's it?
It happened a couple times. It happened really in Denver in the beginning, the first week or so against the veterans, because if you don't adjust and you don't up your game, you're going home. So I kind of knew that I thought it was tough. I better get better and quick. And I was cut there, so that was a reality check. I mean, that broke me pretty darn good. I mean, it really did. I wasn't expecting it. but only because it wasn't in my plans. It had nothing to do with their plans. It wasn't in my plans. And then I went back and I worked harder and harder and learned a lot from that experience. So when I got my next chance, I was ready for it. I was able to be prepared for it. But I got cut at the end, the last cut, my last year playing, and I kind of realized, you know, I had no guilty conscience because I'd done everything physically and humanly possible to try and put myself in a position. And you have to remember, like the guy that I played behind at the Colts, he played in the NFL for 20 years. Ray Donaldson. I mean, he was phenomenal. And it's hard to break in, especially when you're not elite. And you know, there was 42-man roster back then, or 45-man roster. That was it. You know, so you're going to be in that grouping. So it was a challenge. I learned a lot from it. You know, and the thing I remember, I tell people now, and it's no different. People talk about competitive. Oh, what are you doing about every Monday or Tuesday? Every NFL team today, just like they did back then, are going to bring in 3 or 5 or 10 guys to try out to take your job. Every week, week 15, there's 5 or 10 or 15 guys that's looking to take, and they're hungry. They're starving. Yep. You know what I mean? And so I learned about competitiveness, and it fit my personality. But it was heartbreaking. But I got into a routine of the flooring business, and I got into a routine of life after football. And my girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife, helped me navigate through it. And it was time, you know. I knew who I could beat out, and who couldn't beat out, and I just didn't want to go to camp to be a guy.
Oh, that's powerful. And 2 things we wanted to touch upon that you do today, but I got to go back a little bit, because one thing I didn't understand was when you were at HML and you were like, nah, nobody knew me. I was like, wait a second. Don Bailey. Your pops did something in Miami that revolutionized marketing. To this day, I mean, I'm telling you, I was at 995 2 days ago, and I'm like, man, I'm interviewing. He's on my podcast.
He's on the pod.
So, today you're the CEO, right, of Don Bailey Flooring. Yeah. And you also do what you do with the Hurricanes, but you go in HML, like everybody had to have known you in the community. Like that's Don Bailey. Is that you in the picture? Like, was that?
They knew. The parents knew. A lot of the parents probably know, but the kids. But you got to remember now, Miami in '79. This Miami Lakes out here was like 100 miles away from I-95. Right. You know, it wasn't like today where you're zipping around and you know, we didn't have the sign on Okeechobee Road until then. But you know, the billboard to this day is phenomenal. And you know, it came around because of Burt Reynolds, right? Burt Reynolds did a pose in Cosmopolitan. He was the first man to pose nude in a magazine. He was a centerfold. Now, our version is that Burt Reynolds copied us, and his version is, of course, he was the first person to do it. But you know, I give my dad credit, man. He had a lot of nerve, because we were talking before. That's 1972, 3 or 4. Not every phone call was, "Hey, man, we love your sign." There was lines and petitions about what, you know, let's take this down and what is this guy doing? But his brother actually was in the billboard business and hand painted it, and they put signs up in the Keys and wherever we can have a building, we throw the sign up to this day.
Now, let me tell you, even as a kid, we were in a school bus going to a game, and everybody knew Don Bailey. Like, this Don Bailey from So it was that marketing. I mean, that's something. And I know there's a book that touches upon that. So
Jim Martz, who I don't know if you remember him. He wrote for the Herald, and then he just recently passed away. For my dad's birthday, I said, you know, what can I do for him? He has everything. Well, there'd be nothing he'd like more than to read a book about himself. So I got Jim Martz to interview him and put a book together, and you know, my dad will tell you it's the second greatest story ever told. You know, I mean, the Bible's the first greatest story. This is the second greatest story. But it's been great, and he's, you know, I'm very proud of him. You know, he came out of Miami Edison High School and didn't have a job, and started with a company called Harry Rich, which was flooring, at 19, and by the time he was in his early 20s, he was vice president, and started that business when he was in his early 40s and has just done a phenomenal job. You know, I mean, everybody sees the picture, but there's a very hardworking, brilliant businessman behind it.
God bless him. That's it's amazing, and I think you're honoring him every day, right? I think there's always that story where that second generation, you know, the business has fought. No, and you're continuing going, and I think that's the best way to honor a parent. So kudos to you.
I appreciate that.
And then before we go head on to some questions from the students that they have for you, one last one for you.
Yeah.
What you do for the Hurricanes today? Talk to us a little bit about that, because although you finished your playing career, it continues moving forward, and you share, I mean, in what you do every day. So talk to us about what you do, how you prepare, and how you love it so much, right? Several decades later.
Yeah, I don't even know the number of years. I'm afraid to count. And I get asked every now and then, Don, how much longer you can do the UM games? Until I can't. Period. It's my favorite thing on earth. You know, it's my make-a-wish. Like, if everybody has their wish, I'm doing my wish. I'm fortunate to work with Joe Zagacki. The university has been beyond great for me. I mean, I really say that they changed my life, or saved my life, or directed my life. And to be able to broadcast and be around all the head coaches and see the hope in the kids. That's what people don't get. You know, they say, I see the hope that, you know, whether they're going to the NFL or they're going to have a degree, or I see kids come from nothing and they learn to be together, and the coaching and the teaching. And, you know, everybody says, "Man, Bailey, you're the biggest homer there is." Thank you. I am. This is my home. Miami's my home. I'm born and raised here. Miami's my home. I'm proud of Miami. University of Miami is my life. I mean, and you know, some people get nasty about it every now and then. You know, I says, "Hey, bro, hold on. You're talking to a guy that met his wife there. I've been with her for 40 years. You know what I mean? I mean, that's my girl. I met her there. I got my age. I'm the first person in my family ever to get a degree. I got it from the University of Miami. So, I mean, you know, that's where my heart is. And I call the games the same way. And it's easy. You know this. It's easy to say negative things.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to say the positive things.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? It's easy. That's the easiest road, is to throw a stone. 100%. Not me. Not about my university. And I find the good in all of it. And I find and there is good in all of it. And I'm fortunate, and they have helped me every single day continue to hone my skills. And I take it very serious. Somebody asked me years ago, they said, "How do you prepare?" I said, "It's very simple. I can do the Super Bowl every week. That's how I do it. I don't. It's not 2 hours. It's a week's work, and that's how I approach it, because I can't misrepresent my University of Miami."
That is true. It's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes that people they think you just grab the microphone and
they do, right?
Yeah.
That's
not how it works.
No.
So handing it off to the students, and to Brand and Albert, I know they might have some. They got some questions lined up for you.
So I'll break the ice here. So after you finished around 85 playing football, when was that moment that you really decided, you know what, I'm gonna go into broadcasting. I'm gonna wanna, you know, I wanna start commentating. I wanna start, you know, diving into it.
I think the hardest thing for anybody is in any sport is when you're done. You're lost a little bit, because you had an identity, you had a family, you had a purpose. And I was, you know, I started right into the business and I had goals there, but something was missing, you know, the interaction of a team. And it took me about, 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. And then I says, I'm either going to go into coaching or I'm going to go get into the broadcasting. And I got into the broadcasting and I attacked it. I went and got myself a job. You know, I went and knocked on the doors of the local stations. I said, "Hey, I want to do a show called Cane Sport," I think it was called. And I said, somebody gave me an hour and of time, and I had to pay for an engineer and half the ads. I went out and sold it, and I started it. And then the station came in, another station came in right after that and took over that. And I got an opportunity to do the games the next year. So it was a knocking on doors and creating an opportunity, and it worked out perfect. It really did. And I've learned a lot and met a lot of great people, and absolutely enjoy the business. No, I wouldn't have done it any different, because I say no because it's turned out great, but in hindsight, which, I probably should have taken that route in college, right? If I would have taken, communications or broadcasting in college, and would have had that exposure, because really I didn't find out that I had any kind of knack until my senior year, when I took a public speaking course, and I just excelled at it. And if I would have had that success maybe as a freshman or a sophomore, it would have pushed me into that. But I'm very competitive, but the only thing I'm really content in my life, because I'm so competitive, is my broadcasting of University of Miami. I don't need to be all right to be on game day, wouldn't it? I think I said be the only thing that would be. No, but seriously, I mean, I'm very, very content with the University of Miami. I have no desire to do anything but that, because I feel that I have a big debt to pay to them, and every time I'm representing them, I can pay that debt.
What's been your favorite moment in broadcasting, like in your career as broadcaster?
Every second that I get to do it. Today's a favorite day for me, right here, right now. I don't take one thing for granted. I will tell you that broadcasting national championship games is pretty cool. I mean, when you're doing a Rose Bowl, or you're doing a Fiesta Bowl, and it's for all the marbles and the whole deal, and it's a big game, and you're getting a ring, and if you win it and all of that stuff, that's a pretty big deal. But if I love broadcasting Miami, Florida State. I'm looking forward in September from when Miami plays Florida, or when Miami plays Notre Dame. When it's Florida State, Florida, Notre Dame, I tell Joe Zagacki, I said, listen, it's my day today. I says, he knows there's no rules today. You got protocol, but when it's a big game like that, even at this stage of my career, it's different. That's a different day for me when you play that, or a championship game. You know what? I will answer. So you asked about a memory that I had. I will tell you what was very special is that when Mark Richt was head coach here at the University of Miami, I played with him for 4 years at Miami. He was a free agent at Denver when I was there. And when he was at UM, it was very, very special for me, because I was happy to see my guy, who I played with there. And it's very similar right now with Mario Cristobal, because we're 10 years apart, but I saw him as a player, and it's special for me to have a UM guy at UM, as it was with Randy Shannon. He was a UM guy. He was a UM. That's very special to me. I think that's a great experience.
That is true. Appreciate you guys. Anything else? So Don, we turn it over to you, which is a little dangerous because he's a professional at this, right? We turn it over to you for 2 questions. You get to ask me a question or them a question, whatever you want to do, but you got 2 questions to ask too, whatever you want.
How did you decide that you were going to take the path of being in politics and being a mayor and doing what you do?
Good.
What's your drive? What's your why, and what's your driving force?
That's a great question. So it's interesting because I never wanted to be in public office, right? Everybody kind of shies away from it because there's a negative side to it, right? Where you get attacked all the time. Those stones get thrown at you all the time, even though they might not be true. But I always wanted to be a marine biologist. To this day, I love the ocean, but I had an issue. I would get seasick. So that my mom put me in camp at John Penny Camp, and I would go out, and immediately they had to turn the boat around. All the other kids were upset because they were ready to dive. I was like, I can't. I'm like, So that's when I realized, there has to be something else. And I realized that in public service, every rule, from the rules of radio, right, that govern how radio stations broadcast and what can be said, from what we eat to the eyeglasses you have, that doctor, what requirements that doctor has. Somebody in elected office, either in the federal government, state government, local government, made that decision along the way. So I became enamored with that process, started studying poli-sci at Miami-Dade College, FIU, St. Thomas. I became an aide in the Florida legislature. And then after that, it was a natural progression where I was like, I think it's time to take it to the next level and run for public office, which wasn't easy. I ran against an incumbent the first time, but to me, what I saw behind the scenes, I was like, there has to be a better way. And for us, similar to how we started this podcast, it all started with an idea. I was like, newspaper nowadays are kind of disappearing little by little. TV, they only give you 30 seconds to tell a story, but long form conversations can help cities tell great stories like yours in our community that can inspire that next generation. So very, very similar to that. I was like, we can always do something better. And that's how I got into public office. I ran for office. And after that, I felt, God gives us that platform to do good. And I was like, you know what, we gotta go all the way and make those changes that we have to be that change that we want to see in the world. I can't sit on the sidelines. I got to be that starting center at Penn State, you know what I mean? Instead of being the guy on the sideline. So it was that take.
I'm going to follow up with another one.
Okay.
Most influential person in your life?
Or
a couple. There's usually more than one.
To me, it's my grandmother, my mom, and my dad. I mean, their story from everything was taken away from them, right? Everything. Not only their homes, but their businesses, their religion, the way that they raised their kids, to them traveling here and getting here day one, never getting any assistance, and working in factories and moving up. Like my mom ended up getting her master's in psychology from St. Thomas. My dad ran a mental health crisis unit. He was a director for many years, but it started living in walk-in closets in Little Havana, living in one bedroom, 4 or 5 people somewhere in Hialeah, but it was always that take in my dining room table. It's like, Manny, you can do whatever you want as long as you work hard. And that really always inspired me. That stayed in the back of my mind because they would always instill that in me. My mom, interesting story. My mom, when I didn't behave too good in middle school and high school. So
either did I. Good for you.
Yeah, no. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was still sleeping. She would go in and she would put holy water on me. She'd give me the side of the cross, give me a kiss, and pray, because she was like, Manny, like, we made all these sacrifices for you to succeed, and sometimes we don't appreciate those things until we get older. So now when I look back on it, I'm like, man, I was able to be successful because my parents and my grandmother were always on top of me to make sure that I do good. So they inspire me. The only one that's still with us is my mom, but they all three inspired me every single day to move forward, because I'm like, if they made all these sacrifices, I would be dishonoring them if I don't do good and move forward, so that's something that stays in the back of my mind every day.
Does she give you a little still?
She does.
I bet you need it.
She does. Yeah. She prays all the time, so which I enjoy more than ever, and I appreciate it more than ever. But good question, by the way. That's a great question. So Don, in closing, if you can look at that camera and share some words of inspiration, motivation, that next Don Bailey, that next kid who might be in North Miami. And now, by the way, you can go to any school in Florida, right?
Exactly.
You could even play football at one school, transfer to another one, play basketball, and then transfer again and play baseball, which is, the rules have changed. So that kid who is looking for that opportunity, and maybe they didn't have a good junior year, but that dream, that drive still led you to where you're at today, which you had a solid senior year. And I think a lot of kids give up after their junior year because now they say that's the year that they look at you the most, but they forget how important that last year is, and just the journey, some words of inspiration, motivation.
I think that the thing you have to realize is that you have to set a goal. You set your goal, not your parents' goal, not your friend's goal. Set your goal and get there. Find out what the obstacles are that are in the way and overcome them. And don't let anybody tell you any different. Because if you're going to that goal, believe me, if you ask 1,000 people when I was in 10th grade or 11th grade or 12th grade, is Don Bailey going to the NFL? They say no. There's no way that skinny kid's going. But I don't care what they say. You have to set your own path. And if you don't get there, something else as good is going to happen along the way if you're outworking everybody else. Think about that. If you're outworking everybody else for your goal, some part of it's going to come true. And we see it every single day. His parents, him, think about it. If you look at the regular people, look at what they're doing and accomplishing. But if you think you're just gonna accidentally fall into it, that doesn't happen. That's a lottery ticket. That doesn't happen. But I would say set a goal and work towards it, and spend as much time as you can dedicating yourself to what you think you can be great at. And if you don't get exactly there, something will come of it. Something good will come of it if you are the hardest working and be honest with yourself and where you're at. And don't listen to the critics. Don't listen to them. Surround yourself with people that believe in you and can help you. And the critics, they're criticizing you to make themselves feel better. But stay focused, and I think that's the best thing I can tell you to do is set that goal and go get it, man.
There you have it, the incredibly inspiring story behind Don Bailey Jr. Tune in next Wednesday on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X.